Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the April 9th, 2025 East Lansing Planning Commission meeting. Mr. Bartley, would you please take roll?
I will. Commissioner Chapin, Commissioner Denault,
Here.
Commissioner Hendricks, Commissioner Lapine, Commissioner Overbey,
Here.
Commissioner Putz,
Here.
Commissioner Sevaleski,
Here.
Vice Chair Wagner, Chair Sullivan.
Here.
We have quorum.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
So moved. Seconded.
Moved by Commissioner Chapin, or Overbey. You guys switch seats. And then seconded by Commissioner Putz. Seeing any discussion? No? Okay. All those in favor vote aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Agenda is approved. That takes us on to item 1.3, approval of the minutes from the March 26th Planning Commission meeting. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Denault, seconded by Commissioner Putz. Seeing no discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Minutes are approved. That takes us on to item number 2, committee reports. Up first is the Age-Friendly Communities Committee. Commissioner Chapin is not here, so Landon, do you want to give an update on this one?
Yeah, very briefly. Since the last meeting on March 26th, this committee has not, or the Age-Friendly Committee has not met. There was a age-friendly forum that was hosted by Age Alive at MSU at the MSU FCU down at Farm Lane near Mount Hope on April 3rd. I was supposed to present unfortunately I was stuck in Chicago coming back from Denver, so I was unable to, but I've heard great things about that, and I believe that at the next Age-Friendly Communities Committee meeting on April 17th, we're going to be hearing from the director of Age Alive at MSU, Lisa Ritchie, who is going to hopefully tell us about that event as well. So we'll have more to report after the next, or at the next meeting. That's all.
Great, thank you. Up next is the Comprehensive Plan Update Coordinating Committee. You want to give a brief update here? I know it's on the agenda later.
Yep. The committee has been meeting, met at the end of March, and then following that meeting decided it would be great to have another work session to massage some of the text. And we had an all morning session on Friday the 4th last week. Unfortunately, because of some issues with our graphics program, we weren't able to incorporate those changes that were proposed, but I've included those in the packet tonight to give you an idea of what we will be incorporating as soon as the Planning Commission decides to move along with this plan, which could be tonight or you could wait. So I'll talk more about that at our item 8.1.
Some good foreshadowing.
Sure.
Okay, up next is 2.3 Green Code Study Committee. We met last night. Do you want to give an update about that?
I'd love to. Yeah, the Green Code Study Committee met last night. Has been meeting generally every 2 weeks. Currently is waiting on some recommendations for action on stormwater-related items, specifically stormwater-related items. Department of Public Works has been working with a consultant who's been helping them as they craft the recommendations coming out of the committee. We expect those won't be ready for a couple weeks still, so the next meeting will be on May 13th. That said, we also had a very good discussion, great discussion, a very wide-ranging discussion about stormwater and various potential implementation steps. But we also had a first look from DPW staff Cliff Walls, who has been, I would say, leading DPW side of things up until this point, and he's proposing some potential changes to the tree ordinance. So the committee looked at that first look last night, and once we finish the stormwater recommendations from the committee and forward those along to council for consideration, the committee is going to start moving into more discussion of that tree ordinance and also some potential recommendations for changes to the zoning ordinance. So I expect that will probably start taking place probably the second half of this year. And I'll have more updates at our next meeting.
Great. Thank you for the update. Any questions for city staff? Seeing none, that takes us on to item number 3, staff reports. I'll keep it with you, Mr. Bartley.
I think I've covered my report. Alicia, do you have anything? We're set.
Okay. All right. Going easy on me. All right. Up next is item number 4, commissioner announcements. This is your time for any general announcements as well as any disclosure of conflicts of interest for agendas on the items on the agenda. Seeing none?
And I'll just, if I may, I'll
Please.
just mention on behalf of Commissioner Chapin, who wasn't able to be here tonight, he had a concern about ex parte communication with a member of the applicant's team for the Meijer item. We talked about it. He sent an email to the commissioners last week, and I didn't feel that there was any conflict. Our city attorney didn't feel that there was any conflict, and he's not here tonight. So just wanted to disclose that for the record.
Great, thank you. Takes us on to item number 5, communications from citizens. First up is 5.1, written communications. I did see the letter attached to item 7.1 in the agenda packet. I didn't see anything else. I didn't miss anything, did I?
That's correct.
Okay, that takes us on to item 5.2, verbal from the audience. So this is the time for the audience to come forward to address the Planning Commission on anything on tonight's agenda. There is no public hearing for tonight. I will say just the standard statement of please keep your comments to 5 minutes or less. Please identify yourself on the card that's up there if you haven't submitted one already. And at this point, I can start reading the cards that I have, and then we'll open it up to general comments from the public. First up is Jessica Maxon.
Good evening. My name is Jessica Maxon from Maxon Dental. There was a theme that transpired at the last meeting around the proposal for the Meijer gas station. It was curiosity. I think Walt Whitman said it the best, be curious, not judgmental. It emphasizes the importance of approaching situations and people with an open mind and a desire to understand, rather than make quick judgments or assumptions. Thank you to Commissioner Chapin for staying curious at the last meeting and asking why. And thank you, Commissioner Denault, for staying curious at the last meeting about the bike rack at the newly proposed patio in front of Wallace Pizza. You shared how that bike rack was a part of your story while visiting one of your favorite spots. Although small and perhaps insignificant to most, it is still important and serves a purpose. So although Maxon Dental may be a small business, we are pillars of health and taking care of people in really big ways in this community. We also serve to care for the environment and safety. In addition, we are stewards of our property and our neighborhood here in East Lansing. April is my favorite month because it's Earth Month. So in honor of Mother Earth, I would like to bring some attention to the small wetland identified on this beautiful undeveloped land. As you all know, wetlands are indispensable and fragile, natural resources that provide many public healths. Preservation of the remaining city wetlands in a natural condition shall be and is necessary to maintain. The City Council declares a policy of no net loss of wetlands. Furthermore, the City Council declares a long-term goal of net gain for wetlands. And my favorite in section 5038, existing wetland areas not regulated by the state or the city and surface drainage ways shall be preserved to the maximum extent to maintain stormwater control, water quality, natural habitat, and open space. So here's where I started to get really curious about this little wetland. I wanted to know who did the report. Where did they come from? And when was the report done? What are some important factors to take into consideration when conducting a wetland determination? Well, with an open mind and a desire to understand, I simply read a lot. I discovered that a company called Mark's Wetland out of Ypsilanti performed a wetland determination for an approximately 2-acre lot on March 8, 2023. A non-regulated wetland was identified. The wetland is less than a 1/4 acre in size, but then I got judgy when I read, Wetland evaluations performed outside the growing season, from late October until late April, may not be consistent with the official Eagle Wetland Assessment Program, and therefore are subject to increased potential change than those that are performed during the growing season. So therefore, boundary adjustments may be based on a review of a regulatory agency. So my question is, why? Would the city ever accept a wetland determination outside the growing season? Who knows how big this wetland is unless it's honored during its growing season, and what else could be discovered? Let's make a commitment tonight to never destroy a wetland that was not fairly assessed. And the second topic that I brought to your attention was the devastating traffic impact study from Colliers. I stayed curious, and then I got judgy, and then I got curious again, and well, you all have my facts and my discoveries in the agenda for this evening. I just hope that you would never consider endangering this community by allowing a gas station to be developed at this intersection. One is enough. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Up next is Greg Maxon.
Dr. Maxon, owner of Maxon Denault PC, the property just west of the proposed development. Thanks for letting me speak again. So last meeting, one of the commissioners brought up the issue of flooding down the street on Abbott. Last summer, there was a couple of floods that were pretty devastating, not far from this corner. And I wanted to give you an update now that April showers have hit and where the water goes and what the water does right next to our properties. Last week we had ankle deep water on a significant stretch of the property line between the two properties. We also had multiple sites of standing water for most of the week on the site. When you walk around the sidewalk, you can see it's lower than the sidewalk. And I wanted to update you because I am concerned about what happens to water and what would happen if we pave over that entire site. I worry about my building and standing water against our foundation or our basement. Also, for over 30 years, the site where I practice has been a dental office, taking care of the patients that live here in East Lansing. And I think in terms of the future, when I get prepared to sell my practice to a young dentist in 15 or 20 years, what will I be left with when I do my environmental site assessment for selling? Will I be left with the risks for contamination? Will I discover possible pollution because we're 40 feet from a gas station? I worry about that future, and I would hope that the board here won't make a recommendation to put us in that type of position. Also, what was brought up by our newest commissioner last meeting was the question about how does East Lansing City make money off of different developments? I think he compared it to a gas station with a child care. And Mr. Kildea from Gillespie Group also was very poignant in saying this would be a very lucrative opportunity. You can read between the lines of that question and those statements to know that East Lansing has financial gain at risk here. And I would ask you all, based on the information that my wife has gone through and spoke about the last two meetings, to not make a decision just based on money. Money is at the root of this, we certainly know that. But I would hope that you would make a decision based on, and a recommendation based on greater good as the priority. One of the things that I also remember is Mr. Kildea said, if not a Meijer gas station, we're going to be right back here with another group wanting another gas station. That sounded like a threat. And again, I would ask you to reconsider. I actually have a suggestion for a solution. And I don't want to come and just be someone that stands here and complains that I disagree with that development. I'd like to offer something to consider that I think could be a win-win. I would ask that this board vote no against a Meijer gas station at this site and any gas station. I don't think this is a suitable site for a gas station for a lot of reasons. But I would ask that you recommend to the East Lansing City Council to consider developing a gas station at the Meijer Superstore. Near a gas station there's no gas station in that stretch. It's near a highway. It's already paved and developed. And if you must have something developed on this site, I would ask that you guys stick with the focus of recommending that it be a low-profile suburban style development. I think that certainly wouldn't add to the traffic safety concerns the same way. I think also it could work around a wetland better, and it would be more closely compatible with the existing neighborhood and the intentions of it. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Pat Gillespie.
Thank you for taking the time to listen to the issues tonight. We are the owner of the property. We've owned it for about 2 years. We bought it from the Martin family, the Quality Dairy family that had always intended to put a convenience store, gas station there. He passed away, so we purchased it, reached out to Meijer's. He's right. We've had many phone calls from other groceries or other convenience stores and gas stations that would like to be there. We've dealt with Meijer's in the past, and just to know that they are a community-minded company. They all over the state, Indiana, Ohio, Michigan. We've dealt with them on a couple other projects, and they're always looking about, how do they impact the neighbors? How do they impact the community? They give back to the community in many ways. It's a great community partner. It's not just a convenience store. I think all of us have probably been there over the years many times in many different aspects. So, piece of dirt that is zoned for this use. We're here for a permit to be able to allow for a gas pump. So, just happy to have them as a partner in this deal, and they've been fantastic to deal with, and they've looked out for the community in every which way in the site plan process, as far as fencing the neighbors, screening the neighbors, whatever needs to be done. They've been more than generous and happy to do it to make sure everyone's accommodated. So, if you have any questions for me, I'm right here. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you for your comments. Matt Levitt. Wait. Got it. Understood. Architect Tom, is it Feeder? Sorry, I'm trying to read the handwriting. Reader. Okay.
I'm just here to answer questions.
Okay, thank you. Just checking. And then Paul Furman.
Good evening, Paul Furtaw with Collier's, 7050 West Saginaw. I can come back up if there's specific questions to answer for staff. I am the civil engineer, and I'm familiar with the project. I can speak a little bit to the wetlands to offer clarification. We do acknowledge that there was a non-regulated wetland identified, but there was also an independent study done by ASTI on behalf of the city that confirmed that that wetland is non-regulated both in the eyes of the city and in the eyes of the state.
Okay.
So with that, I can come back up later and
Okay,
answer any
thanks for the
questions.
clarification. Yeah, I'll have you guys come back up if there's questions from commissioners after city staff gives an update. So, seeing no other members of the public that wish to come forward, is there anyone online in the queue?
There is no one in the queue.
All right, settles that. Since we have no public hearings, that takes us on to unfinished business. Up first is item 7.1, a request from Matt Levitt on behalf of Meijer Inc. for approval of a special use permit located at 100 West Lake Lansing Road. The applicant's request is to construct a 5,751 square foot gas station with 6 gas pump islands and 12 pumps. The property is zoned B2 Retail Sales Business District. Ms. Wrighton, I think this is you, right?
Yes. Alicia Wrighton, Planning Department. At the last meeting, Commissioner Chapin asked for some details related to the site where the store actually exists. To answer those questions, the development for the Meijer store was approved on April 19th, 1983, which allowed for the store to operate there. Then again, on June 12th, 1985, there were some rezoning of 5 parcels to classify it a B5 Community Retail Business District. August 8th, 1991, Meijer submitted an application for convenience and gas station. Staff recommended approval with conditions, as did the Planning Commission. But on October 1st, 1991, the City Council denied the request. December 22nd, 1993, Meijer submitted an application for a gasoline filling station and convenience store. again, with recommendations, with conditions by staff and planning commission. On April 19th, 1994, at the city council meeting, Hank Hondorp withdrew the gas station application and council accepted the withdrawal. The parcel was Zone B5 at the time of the filing of the request, which allowed gas stations and car washes, and council removed those uses from the B5 district on April 19th, 1994. May 23rd, 2007, Meijer submitted an application to amend the B5 zoning district to permit service centers subject to special use approval, and the Planning Commission recommended denial of the request to amend the B5 district to allow those auto centers. And then on subsequent, that was on, I'm sorry, July 11th, 2007, and subsequently the special use application was recommended for denial. And on November 7th, 2007, City Council rejected the ordinance subject to the special use approval. The other information in your packet remains the same as you've seen in the past, so I'd be happy to answer any additional questions, but those were specific to what was asked of us.
And just, if I can just add to that, Alicia just gave the background that had been at the request of Commissioner Chapin from last meeting about what was the history of a gas station requested at the existing Meijer store on Lake Lansing closer to 127. But that information is purely informational, right? The request today is essentially all that information about the history of the store is not material to the current request. This is a request, separate request for a gas station at 100 West Lake Lansing, which is a special use in this district. So just want to clarify for anyone watching or watching this later, that was the intent of the sort of history of what happened there, so you're aware.
Yeah, I was just going to add that as well. So that information is just specific to the Meijer store. We are looking at the corner only, which is at Abbott and West Lake Lansing, for that land use at that corner.
Commissioner Overbey.
May I ask a question, please? So if I understood you correctly, the Planning Commission approved the request and then the City Council said no. Do I understand that correctly?
There were 2 of them early on that were recommended for approval to City Council, and City Council denied the request. The last application in 2007, Planning Commission did recommend denial, as well as Council then denying the request.
Do we know the reasons why?
No.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. The background, though, that's helpful history. Is there any other updates from city staff on this application? If not, we can see if there's any additional questions from commissioners.
I think I'd just mention one thing.
Okay, please.
I'm pulling up the rendering right now. There had been a question, we had some discussions with the applicant, and I know this came up at the last meeting too, about the different standards in your staff report that Alicia wrote as far as essentially what is her professional opinion as to whether or not this request meets those standards. One of those standards, basically you have check marks for most of them. There's one that talks about architectural compatibility. That's not a check mark. I don't think it's as so far as to say it does not meet it, but it doesn't seem to. I guess it's not a red X, right? But it's not a check mark. So there was sort of a question about that, and we had some discussion with the applicant at the last meeting too about this. What should we do instead of what can't we do? So I just kind of wanted to explain that a little bit, that we don't really have design guidelines in the zoning ordinance that would essentially dictate what the design of this of a proposed gas station or any other building would be. But we do have a site plan review standard, which is what Alicia points to in the staff report, which is about as close as we can get to a design guideline. So in her informed opinion, which includes an architecture degree, her informed opinion as staff was that it doesn't really meet this standard. I think the applicant, certainly in our conversations, has said, hey, we don't disagree, and I think that's completely within their rights. But we wanted to sort of explain that sort of why, and that there's not really anything beyond that it doesn't really meet this in our opinion as staff, but we can't really go further than that and say this is what it should be instead. To their credit, I would say after the last meeting, we did talk with, we had suggested include some windows. The applicant introduced some spandrel glass that appears to be windows. It's not transparent. Changed the coloring a little bit. I think that was sort of their intent to try to make it meet the nearby architecture, and they can speak to that more. But I know that question has come up. I certainly wanted to just give some more color, I guess, to that, to why that was in the staff report as it is. So beyond that, I don't think there haven't really been any changes to the application since the last meeting. So, which is why we're not really going through a detailed presentation on the site or the request. We certainly can. Happy to answer questions.
Since you hit on that point, I was going to defer for questions, but I want to stay on that. I wasn't at the last meeting, and I know that there was some discussion early on with the applicant about potential changes from the first proposal that we saw before the Planning Commission to the second iteration that we saw. New windows on the side, alterations to the exterior. I think they muted the color scheme, and then the windows, right? So am I missing anything?
So they added a tan color to some of the spaces along the facade, and then added, as Landon said, spandrel glass on the Abbott side, which is not see-through glass. It just appears to be windows that it's not. So it's paint and a couple of windows.
Okay.
And
So the utility
there was
ones,
an
right?
oversaturation from the first picture, the first presentation that was provided, where the color is still the same for that gray, but then they made it not be so oversaturated. So it looks like a lighter gray and a tan, but by the color scheme in the packet, the number is the same, but they added some tan paint to the brick.
Okay. I have a couple other questions, but I'm going to defer to the commission first. Any questions from commissioners? All right, I guess it's on me. What is a non-regulated wetland? I'm dying to know what that is. And what are the standards for wetland review for a non-regulated wetland as far as a special use permit?
Yes.
Essentially, with the disclaimer that the planning staff is not are not the people who make that determination. Generally goes through Department of Public Works, through Eagle, and through City Council in some cases. Essentially, you have some wetlands that are considered sort of environmentally important, and some that have such a relatively limited impact or limited environmental value, I guess. I personally feel a little bit unprepared to sort of explain how that determination has come to, but generally through Eagle and through our professional staff at Department of Public Works, they make a determination, and then in many cases a recommendation to City Council, who ultimately decides in some cases which wetlands are contributing or not. This one was decided that it's not considered a contributing wetland, and just like the applicant mentioned, the ASTI study found the same. I don't know if that answers your question.
I guess put a simpler way, there's a box essentially that's been checked for the review of this application by city staff on the wetland item, and they're not in violation of any standard. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I think there's certainly, it's open to interpretation, as some folks who spoke tonight in public comment feel that there is value, but our staff and the STI study did not.
And the next question I had is, so the ingress egress off of Lake Lansing, is that right turn only, or can you turn right and left? It seems to me that, okay, so that's right turn only, because I was going to say turning left out of that would be very problematic with the light and the gas station across the street. Thanks for clarifying that. I think that's all the questions I have for city staff. Is there any other questions for city staff? Seeing none. I had a couple questions for the applicant. Is there any other questions for the applicant before I ask mine?
Jump in.
Oh, you guys, just please, if you want to come up, I had a couple questions. Yeah, but the first question is going to be regarding grading and infill of the soil to mitigate water runoff, so whoever's best equipped to answer that question.
Sorry, could you repeat that?
Yeah, so specifically, is there going to be any infill on the site? And can you just talk generally about the grading and addressing the stormwater issues? I know it's a huge topic of concern in the city. We have
Sure.
a committee reviewing that. I think a lot of people just want to know.
Yeah, there will be grading on the site, there will be infill on the site, but the stormwater management system will be designed to accommodate a 100-year runoff, and stormwater will only be discharged at the pre-developed rate. I don't know if that's clear, it's kind of technical, but there's water leaving the site now. I realize there's a depression, but statistically, you can calculate how much water is leaving the site. And that flow will be less than or equal to, after it's developed, it'll be less than or equal to what it is now.
Is
And that's-
there water retention on site?
There will be, yes.
Okay.
It'll be underground stormwater detention. I'll offer some clarification too. I think the flooding down the road came up. I suspect that was a Quarters. And the fundamental difference between these two sites is Quarters is immediately adjacent to the floodplain. And if I'm not mistaken, their stormwater discharges into that floodplain. So when that floodplain fills with water, there's nowhere for that water to go. We actually have a positive outlet for our site. There is storm sewer immediately adjacent to the site, which is lower than the site itself, so there is an avenue for water to leave the site.
Okay, thank you. That answers my question. Any additional questions from commissioners? Okay, is there a motion so we can discuss this? Unless there's questions for staff, seeing none. I'm ready for a motion.
I actually had a question. Sorry, I was trying to formulate it in my brain.
Is it for staff or the applicant?
Yes? It's just a point of clarification, I think, in the packet. I think originally the city arborist, or there was some discussion of keeping the mature trees along the perimeter of the site. And I feel like I saw that in the new packet that the site would be completely cleared. Is there clarification on if we're able to save any of the mature trees or not?
So Jim Rosema from Colliers, between the first drawing that you saw to the second one, originally had said that they were going to try and save as many mature trees as possible. On the second iteration, it was that it appeared that they were going to have to clear the site. Our arborist indicated that there's some mature elms that they would like to see saved, but no discussion was further came out of that about the elms.
Was there any indication as to why that change occurred?
I would ask the engineer to answer that.
See, it was for both, huh?
I am not Jim, but I will do my best to address. Matt Levitt, 2929 Walker Avenue in Grand Rapids. The trees that so I think some of the confusion came in is we've taken a more nuanced look at that since the first meeting as that question was raised, what trees can be saved and what can't. Where you see paving, obviously a tree cannot remain. The root system is too large along the edge of the property due to the bounds of the property. So the trees that are effectively where the paving is and to the west are not able to be saved. The root system is too large. It would be damaged to the point where it would die. So we remove the trees and we replant trees along the edge of the property where we're capable of doing. North of the paving, there is a lot that is still there. It's being combined into our lot, but those will be untouched and the trees will remain as they are. I think some of the question that came up was there are a couple of trees that have been identified directly on the border of where the paving is proposed to be and where the trees will remain. And I think that will be an issue that is resolved during construction. So whether you want to take that as they can't be saved or they can be saved, the instruction will be that they need to be kept if possible. But if the tree is going to die anyways, the better solution is to remove it during construction and not risk death and any sort of, potential either tree falling or issues that result from leaving dead trees with limbs that could break, things like that. So it becomes a safety issue at that point. But I certainly understand where the confusion came in.
Follow-up question to
please.
that?
Sure.
So will the arborist be involved in that decision?
Yeah.
We can. I think that is, as the issue evolves, that can certainly be a point of conversation through development.
Okay.
Okay?
Commissioner, point of clarification, you mean the city's
Arborist,
arborist?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that was actually my follow-up question. That was one of my follow-up questions, so thank you. But my other follow-up question was ultimately who made the determination that the trees were better off being removed early on rather than, right, seeing if they might be able to survive? Was that a professional arborist? Was it yourself? Was it?
He'll better know the process.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, in our defense, we might have been too optimistic at the beginning. I think it's just an evolution of plans from, original concept as the plans developed into more detailed design. While we always try and save as many trees as we can. It's in our best interest to do so. But as the plan evolved, we found that we weren't able to save as many or any that we thought we could have. Does that answer the question? It was an evolutional plan. Again, I think we were too aggressive, optimistic to begin with, and unfortunately, we weren't able to save as many as we
I'll
thought
always
we
take
could.
optimism first.
Yeah, until I get challenged later because I was too optimistic.
I only ask my question because I think it's helpful to sort of know who is making the determination as to like whether or not these trees have a chance of surviving, whether it's someone who's not a tree scientist like myself,
Sure.
versus a city, not the city arborist, but a arborist who might have more experience. That was sort of the target of my question.
I understand. So did we answer that, or is it still?
It was a answer.
I'm not trying to be difficult. Do you want to rephrase? Maybe I didn't misunderstood.
I guess it would be helpful for me to know if
How it was determined, or
by
who determined?
whom it was determined.
Well, in our defense, it was we probably made the determination, and me being an engineer, having practiced for 30 years, like Matt pointed out, the amount of area that we've been able to maintain, based on my professional opinion, I think that the trees within that area are better to come down because I do not think they'll be saved. Well, we did not consult an arborist when it came to that.
Would you? Oh, I'm so sorry. I did not mean to cut you
No,
off.
I mean, that was an engineering judgment, again, based on my experience.
Okay. Would you consider consulting with the city arborist on that question?
Yes,
Thank you.
yep.
And Commissioner, you could add that as a condition if you choose. So
Excellent idea, Mr. Chair.
if it's not already a standard in the conditions, I missed it if it was.
If I may, I would suggest that if the commission is inclined to move ahead with a recommendation of approval tonight, as you mentioned, that would be an appropriate condition of approval, including, I would say, to incorporate the applicant's statement a moment ago about the property to the north being used for sort of towards green space and tree protection requirements. That would need to probably be deed restricted to that effect if that were the case. So so I would suggest if you are moving forward with a motion to approve, then that would be a condition of approval. Does that make sense?
No, Laney, could you rephrase? How would you word the condition explicitly?
I mean, generally, we do have a condition that talks about approval being in accordance with the plans provided by the applicant and per testimony. So that can be captured, but to be explicit, I would say that you would include what you want to include as far as a condition for trees or boundary trees, but to the point of the additional property to the north, you would want to refer to that and say, you know, the applicant has said that this would be included as green space and should therefore be incorporated into the plans and deed restricted as such. I don't think I
Okay.
simplified
I
that at
understand what
all,
you're saying.
but I never do.
Any additional questions from commissioners?
I only,
Commissioner Denault?
yeah, I had one more question. I'm so sorry. I also saw in the most recent packet that the sidewalk along Lake Lansing had still not been straightened out, and that the engineering had continued to raise that as something that they would require, would ask for, would request. I guess I don't know what the correct terminology is. And so is there a...
We actually have a
Okay.
meeting
Oh, perfect.
tomorrow with engineering and the applicant, staff, myself, Landon, and consumers,
Okay,
because there's easements as well.
okay.
So that was the issue, that there's an existing utility easement, and we wanted to make sure that we could essentially facilitate that discussion between consumers, our Department of Public Works, and the applicant.
Perfect. Thank you.
And I pulled up on the screen, just the sort of close-up showing the little jog in the sidewalk. That's the question, I guess, and whether or not that can be straightened out. And hopefully we can address that in our meeting tomorrow.
Okay.
Can I have an opportunity to clarify the trees to the north?
Please.
I had no intention of promising nor opening up the concept of a deed restriction. The trees to the north, as far as Meijer's development goes, will remain as they are. So there will be no clearing of trees as part of our development. That is not to say that our landlord, Gillespie Group, does not have intentions at some point in the future to potentially develop that property. So I cannot sit here and agree to a deed restriction, and I don't think he would have that intention either.
Okay.
But any plan, that is to say, any plan for future development would come back before the commission, and the trees would be a point of conversation at that time. So there is no intention on Meijer's part for committing on behalf of Gillespie Group to in perpetuity not removing trees from that in the future.
I understand. Thanks for clarifying.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Denault, I had planned to just discuss that portion if there's a motion on the table. So if there is a motion, we can deliberate.
Super discussion, I guess. Where's that sample motion at?
Motion's on page 14 of the agenda.
And I might mention, as the commission is looking at the sample motion, considering what to move, that, as you know, this is meant as a sample motion that staff provides to essentially frame making the motion by a commissioner. You can change it as you, however you feel. So, but it's intended to be a sample motion.
Or change it after it's read.
Correct.
Yep.
Thank you.
Just noting for the minutes, Commissioner Hendricks arrived at 7:46. What is the will of the commission?
Just for the purposes of discussion, I'll move to recommend approval by City Council of a request from Matt Levitt on behalf of Meijer Inc. for approval of a special use permit located at 100 West Lake Lansing Road. The applicant request is to construct a 5,751 square foot gas station with 6 gas pump islands and 12 pumps for the following reasons.
You can just say 10 reasons listed in the staff report.
Yeah, for reasons listed in the staff report.
Is there a second? Moved by Commissioner Potts. Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Overbey. Okay, discussion. Who wants to go first?
I think I already have made my thoughts clear about how valuable keeping as many mature trees on the site is. I especially appreciated the city arborist insight, calling out for the preservation of mature trees versus, right, smaller trees that these would eventually be replaced with. Right, trees do a lot of important work, especially in an era of human-caused climate change, and does a lot for stormwater retention, which we know is a very large problem here in the city. I do, on the subject of stormwater, on the Green Code Study Committee, that group is currently working to review recently approved projects in light of potential new regulations for stormwater. And the very real question came up, right? Would we approve past projects with better information or new policies about stormwater impacts? And we don't have clear information to answer that question yet. And so I think as someone who's on that committee, I think one of the things that that has given me pause for a lot of development is sort of waiting to see what that committee comes up with and what recommendations that committee makes before, right, welcoming new development. And then I think one of my last points here, I drive through this intersection multiple times a week to go to the city's dog park, which is also on the same campus as the aquatic center and softball complex. And I will say, I did look at the traffic study, but that intersection is very congested with the housing and residential areas in all directions. And adding another business on that corner really makes me anxious for families who are traveling through that intersection with vans full of kiddos going to the aquatic center. And I know that the applicant has done all they can to sort of restrict egress in and out of that site by saying right turns only, no left turns. But we all can probably assume that there will be people who will attempt to make left turns out of there. And I think adding an additional business with egress in and out just creates the potential for more traffic issues in that area.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Yeah, one of the things I wanted to address head on was the whole relocation of the gas station in front of the Meijer store. And I think that's quite an unfair standard, because if the gas station were to be branded as any other brand, we wouldn't have talked about any of that in the first place. And it largely is arbitrary to what the application is in front of us. So I understand some people may prefer it to be there, but that's not what's on the agenda. And as I understand it, that's not what the intent is of the applicant. So that's an issue I'll happily set aside, is not under consideration. I do understand your point about future standards and going through the Green Code Study Committee, but I'm very uncomfortable, and I have been for a long time, using, and this is just my opinion, others may differ, but using any sort of potential forthcoming future standards is part of my consideration on any application. It's subjective, and it's a slippery slope. I think the real issue is, let's just be candid, do we think it's appropriate? Have they checked all the boxes necessary to put a gas station on this corner? And do we think a gas station is a good use of this land on this corner? Like, that's the real question to me. I think they've demonstrated that they've met the standards necessary to do so, and ultimately I think people should use that information as a basis and then vote your conscience and how you think you should vote for the application. That's my honest assessment. And if somebody wanted to add a condition requiring them to coordinate with city staff or the city arborist on any sort of specialized plan to retain trees, I would be supportive of that. But yeah, no, so I'm processing all of this, right? The enviro impact, the stormwater impact, those are conditions on approval, items 5 and 6. I'm not an engineer. I can't answer to that question. I know what standards are in place. They have to meet those standards as far as approval of this project by city staff. That's a condition of approval listed in the sample motion. The traffic impact, I'm not a traffic engineer either. I did read the study that was done here. It does give me some solace that they're not able to turn left off of the Lake Lansing ingress egress, because I think that would be awful. I think that would lead to a lot of traffic issues on that site, and ultimately it's a major intersection in our city that's had an undeveloped corner for X number of years, and I think a lot of people would want that to remain undeveloped. And people could have bought that and chosen to do that, but the applicants here, they've having an agreement in place to try to get approval for this, and that's what's before us. So, any other comments before we vote on this?
I might just make,
Commissioner Denault?
yeah, I might just make one more comment. I think two things. One, I really appreciated staff pointing out that this use, and maybe one thing that I'll sort of preface this. One of the things that you mentioned, Mr. Chair, was thoughtful planning. And I do think that that's our role, right, to bring some thought and intention to the planning process. And so I think with that in mind, there's maybe two questions or concerns that I have. One is that this use does not align with the future land use map. And I know that that's not something that's not a standard that we are held to, right? But staff and past planning staff and planning commissions worked to make a plan that would look forward to how they felt that intersection would best serve East Lansing. And this use does not fit within that very intentional and thoughtful plan. To me, building something that fills a use that exists right across the street is not thoughtful planning. I'm glad that you actually brought up the uses in the zoning code that we are asked to evaluate the proposal on, because although Ms. Wrighton does give check marks to a lot of these, if it was in front of me, would not give check marks to some of these. Number one, the purpose of B2 retail is to provide for the development of a variety of retail stores. I feel like having the same use right next to each other does not provide for a variety. I do want to, I think, take into account number 6 here, the proposed use shall not materially diminish the economic value of adjacent properties or the city as a whole. Well, the city as a whole, I probably agree with you, Mr. Chair, does, I think, benefit from a developed corner. I do want to acknowledge that the folks who have a business right next to it might not see the same sort of economic benefit. So I think those are the two other things that I might ask my fellow commissioners to sort of consider as we move forward with our vote. Our calling to be intentional and thoughtful about the planning process.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other comments?
I promise I'm done this time.
You're on a roll there. You keep going. Yeah. I think we're ready for roll call vote. Wait, you didn't want to make a motion to revise any of the conditions, did you? Just confirming.
Sure. Would you accept a
Friendly
friendly
amendment,
amendment?
yeah.
Thank you. Can I add the condition that the applicants will work with the city arborist to professionally evaluate the possibility of keeping as many mature trees as possible.
Well said.
Thank you.
Okay. So motion, revised motion before us for a vote, roll call vote.
Okay. We have a motion on the table to recommend approval with an amendment as proposed proposed by Denault and supported by the mover. That was moved by Putz, seconded by Overbey, and that's to recommend approval of the Meijer gas station at 100 West Lake Lansing Road. Commissioner Denault, how do you vote?
No.
Commissioner Hendricks?
Yes.
Commissioner Overbey?
No.
I'm sorry?
No.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Putz?
No.
Commissioner Sobolewski?
Yes.
And Chair Sullivan?
Yes.
We have a tied vote of 3-3, which results in failure.
Okay. So the motion fails on a 3-3 vote. So this item will be sent to City Council with the recommendation of not approving at a later to be determined City Council meeting. Thank you. All right, that takes us on to item number 8.1, new business. Review of a draft comprehensive plan update document and referral to City Council for distribution. Mr. Bartley?
Thank you. Pull up a brief presentation. It's not working. One moment, please. Here we go. I promise it's brief. We've been working on a comprehensive plan update. Very briefly, I just wanted to go through and talk about the process and where we are today, where we go from here. Essentially, the process has been data-driven from the beginning. We wanted to make sure that we had a clear understanding of the demographics of the city before proposing any updates to the comprehensive plan. And so this is a terrible slide full of lots of busy and very unreadable graphics, but that's okay because people should, who are looking at this online, should go and read the plan, which includes all of this data and much more in a much more readable format. But my point is that we felt that it was very important from the start to have a clear understanding of demographics, of trends in housing prices, in demographic shifts, and shifts in the climate framework of the city before starting. So, as you know, in November of 2023, we started to do some early pre-planning work by staff, essentially having several conversations around the city and with commissioners and city council members. How should we start looking at moving forward with a comprehensive plan update as required by the state every 5 years? And so in December 2023, we started doing some early community engagement to identify the highest planning priorities among citizens and identified essentially 4 focus areas, social equity being the sort of overarching focus area, the highest priority of the community. So sort of as a lens through which all the other focus areas should be considered through, and those other focus areas were housing, public health, and climate resilience or sustainability. So later in December 2023, the Planning Commission said, yes, let's update the comprehensive plan. We don't need a new one. We don't want to let the current one sit, though. Enough has changed in the last, or at least since 2018 when the last comprehensive plan was adopted. So in January 2024, the Planning Commission created the coordinating committee, and that committee began meeting essentially on a monthly basis beginning in March and has met continuously with a short break in the last few months since then. Starting in January and going through April for spring semester of 2024, we had a really talented group of urban planning students who, as their capstone project, did student engagement for the comprehensive plan update. And then starting in April and going through October, we did wider community engagement, not necessarily student focused. Starting in April with a values identification workshop, then in May with planning, sort of a look at how do we get into this planning process from Dr. Rex Lamore from MSU, the Center for Community and Economic Development. Then focused on social equity as a deep dive in June, went to public health in July, climate resilience in August, housing in September, and then said, okay, now we're wrapping up community engagement in October, now what? And sort of moving from the discussion of, I guess, various focus areas into implementation steps in October. And then from November until about February, we were working with our consultant team, led by Aligned Planning with Williams & Works and others assisting, to draft a document that was released to the committee in March for review and has been reviewed in March and then again in April. And now we're bringing this for you for first look today, which we're looking at commission review process and public review process towards adoption. This just gives, again, an overview of the community engagement efforts that we did starting in December and moving through the student engagement in spring semester, then all our different workshops, all up until September. I'm realizing I left out the October workshop as well. One thing I do want to mention too is that after each of the public workshops, generally we brought in a national expert to talk to our group. We were really pleased in June to welcome Vernee Myers to talk about social equity. In July, we had an amazing panel of our local public health officials that talked about very granular data, very localized data, and what's the public health picture in and around East Lansing. In August, we brought in Danielle Aragoni, who is the author of Climate Resilience for an Aging Nation. And then in September, we had Ryan Kilpatrick, who is renowned across the state and the Midwest for his knowledge of housing, and he's been doing some amazing work in Grand Rapids, especially, but in West Michigan and starting now in Mid-Michigan as well. And then I also mentioned the values identification workshop in April was James Rojas and John Camp, the authors of Dream, Play, Build. They helped us identify sort of core values. Rex Lamore, a local planning celebrity, the director of community and economic development at MSU. And then in October, we had Dr. Zine Kodval, who is the director of the urban planning program. So we've certainly had a lot of local, regional, and national experts helping us out with this process. And I would say we've been very lucky to do so. After each of the topical sessions, those focused on social equity, on public health, on climate resilience, on housing, we also had an age-friendly communities talk back where we specifically invited our senior citizens, participants in prime time and other programs, to sit down with staff and, in many cases, the speakers, and just say, great, this is amazing, let's talk about senior concerns. And I thought that was a really a good way to sort of include that group as we're simultaneously updating the age-friendly communities work plan for the city, which actually the Planning Commission may be seeing in the next couple months. Just wanted to sort of show a little bit of sort of select results of community engagement. We had several exercises. These two are showing the mapping exercises we did for housing, in particular on the left side, and then for public health on the right side. Again, this is not meant to be really read from the presentation, but it is in your draft plan as included in the packet. Although what I will point out on the housing the housing map is that we see a general trend of saying let's keep our neighborhoods slightly lower density, let's keep them residential, and let's drive higher density housing into our business districts, and not just downtown, but other business districts across the city. And so I think we may be seeing some interest in maybe modifying our zone districts as such. Just very briefly, our committee has been working over the last couple months, sort of moving from the topical discussions into ideas about how to implement, and that went straight into I mentioned our marathon all morning session last week, talking about implementation steps and making sure that we are sort of accurately capturing what we were hearing in community engagement and turn those into implementation steps that are actionable and hopefully realistic. We separated those essentially into short-term action, which may be low cost. We had sort of a benchmark of less than 10,000. That certainly is not the case across the board, but sort of gave us a place to start with, and things that we can look at in the next 90 days or even even longer than that. But the midterm action steps, maybe more like 1 to 5 years, and then long-term action steps beyond 5 years. So I'm not going through a lot of detail, as you can tell, of the plan itself. We've had significant planning commission participation on the committee, which I've been very thankful for. The coordinating committee itself has been a really good group to work with. We have representation from many community stakeholders and also many of the city's boards and commissions, including councils. So it's been really good to work with this group. One reason why we call it a coordinating committee versus a steering committee is because we sort of said, hey, this is just an update. Although I would say the just an update line is getting stale because I've been hearing from so many people in the community, especially in the coordinating committee too, saying, we're hearing we just want more planning. We want a new comprehensive plan, not just an update. And so I think that really sets us up well for the next comp plan, which I'll be bringing to you before 2030. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Essentially, this has been a great process, and it's been a good opportunity to, I would say, add to the housing discussion from the 2018 comp plan, but also bring in what we didn't see in the 2018 comp plan, which were questions of social equity, more about seniors' concerns, more about climate resilience, and more about public health. Saying that, the draft plan that's in your packet is still a draft. What's intended today is essentially your first look. So on the slide that I have right now, the first look for the Planning Commission is today on April 9th. The next step, if you're comfortable enough to move ahead with it tonight, would be to essentially vote to forward it to the City Council to look at their next meeting. Again, an initial look, which would then be distributed to the wider public, to the coordinating committees, constituent groups, adjacent municipalities, utilities and railroads, and many other stakeholders. So, and I also threw a little picture on essentially of an event that we're going to be holding in May, 1 plan, 2 plan, red plan, blue plan. We like to hold, we're starting to try to hold more sort of community open houses to talk about all the different plans that are going on at the same time. We have several. So once the Planning Commission passes this on, which I'm looking for a vote tonight, if you feel comfortable, it would go to Council. Council will then take the step to say, okay, let's distribute this for wider public review, and that starts a 6-week public review period, which is the length of time that's required by the state of Michigan for a plan update. Following that public review period, we would bring it back to the Planning Commission for a public hearing. At that time, or the following meeting, or following meetings, the Planning Commission, I would hope would choose to adopt the plan. The City Council has the right and can assert its right by resolution to also consider the plan and be the ultimate decision-making body. We expect that. And so we could see Council move to adopt this plan. Again, we hope potentially as soon as July 15th. Again, this is sort of all predicated on the Commission being comfortable moving it tonight. We did have quite a decision about our discussion in coordinating committee about the timing. And some people saying, boy, this is aggressive. And that's been essentially my approach the whole time. Let's keep it moving. Again, sort of considering this is a somewhat limited scope update, I would like to keep it moving. The summer is a little tricky as far as timing, just because Council has 1 meeting a month in July and August. That said, as staff, I do not want to rush this process. You know, if the committee or the community or the commission or the council is feeling uncomfortable about moving ahead at this schedule, we can slow down. That said, I'd love to keep moving. So So again, just to sort of reiterate, the step that I'm looking for today from the Planning Commission is questions, discussion, comments, and then if you feel comfortable to move it forward, to vote to move it ahead to council to distribute for wider public review. With that, any questions at this point?
Before we open it up for questions, first off, I just wanted to commend you and your staff for the colossal amount of work that you put into this and this process. I know there's 4 of us up here that can attest to the work that you put into this. I think the scope is far beyond what I had envisioned on the front end going into this. I'm happy with the product. I think there was a tremendous amount of public feedback. I was very happy with the quality and quantity of participants that were able to participate in the process on the committee itself. And I think that if the future master plan of 2030 reflects the quality of this, I think we're in good shape.
Thank you.
Just to echo what you said, I think tonight was just a high-level overview. I'm comfortable sending it on because this is just a draft. It's going to come back to us after council sees it. City council will have public hearings. We'll have public hearings on it when it comes back before us, and I'm interested in keeping the ball rolling so we can keep the momentum that we have behind this. And with that, I'll open it up to Commissioner Overbey first for some questions.
Well, I want to share the chairman's praise of Landon and his staff. I was on board for this and served with you in this process, and it was a lot of work, and your staff kept going back to the well and back to the well, and they've done a yeoman's job. We're very grateful for that, Landon. Thank you. And I also want to point out that I don't feel rushed to approve it tonight, to recommend that it go to the city council, perhaps because I've been a member of this committee, of the update committee, and I don't feel rushed. And I would add that I feel this document is readable. I think it's a very friendly document, and I urge those people that are looking at it not to let the roughly 90 pages of the document feel daunting to you. It's interesting and it's readable, and as I said, I'm ready to pass it on to City Council tonight.
I'm sorry, did you finish with you are ready?
I am.
Okay.
He's ready to roll. Yeah.
But you didn't feel pressured.
I felt no pressure.
Any other comments or questions about this? All right, Landon, let's start on page 1, and we'll start reading.
Is this the oral reading
Yeah,
section?
oral reading.
Followed by the comprehension
Yeah.
exam.
Let me get a pillow if we're gonna do that.
Okay. Any other councilman?
I'll say, I do want to say something because I'm on the committee too, but mostly absent from the committee because I know that ultimately I've got to make some kind of decision on this. I do want to correct one thing written in the staff report. You may guess that I probably have been exposed to or part of the adoption of the last 3 comprehensive plans and all the amendments that took place during the middle of them. In the staff report, it indicates that possibly this council would adopt the plan rather than send it back to Planning Commission. That would be a first. We have always not adopted the plan because then in our own considerations of planning recommendations that come before us, we treat it as the plan as a guide rather than something that binds us. And that makes the council in a position 5 years down the road or 4 years down the road with changes that have already taken place to be able to adjust on some of the things. So it isn't like set in stone for us. So I think it's very unlikely that we would do it. I can't ever predict the future, but I would not be supportive of the idea of the council adopting the plan rather than the Planning Commission, even though that is, as a matter of law, one of the things that we can do. So I wanted to put that out there in case you're thinking you're going to send this, we're going to make a bunch of changes and then just adopt it. And I don't think that's the process that you're going to see. I think this is a great process. This is actually, believe it or not, a little faster than we've seen in the past on the updates, number one, but definitely for the adoption of any comprehensive plan. So we always say, yeah, we got to get going on that, and then 5 years later, we finally get it done. This is really a remarkable process. I think different than we've seen in the past, and a very good different type of approach. So thank you, Landon.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying that too. So to further clarify, for both of you, so it would go to council, and then council would just, instead of adopting it, they would re-refer it back to planning for approval? Okay.
But the final plan
Potentially.
back to
Yeah.
council, and at that point, we will send it back to planning for approval.
Okay. So,
That's what I would predict.
got it. Your predictions are generally very good, so thank you for your prediction. So before us tonight is to continue the process, send it to council so that they can deliberate it in a public forum there. So, any other questions or comments for city staff or councilman?
Landon, if we have any additional comments on the text, should we send that to you? I'm sure you're like, Chelsea, you've had so many opportunities to share your thoughts, but.
Please do.
Okay.
The plan is a living document, and it's intended to still be edited. So we included comments from the meeting last Friday
Yep.
that are still intended to be incorporated.
Which I could not make, I'm so sorry.
Oh, it's, totally understand.
Okay.
And you've been very involved, so we appreciate it, I think. But we definitely can still incorporate comments.
Perfect.
I would suggest that when we send it to council, so my intent would be to incorporate the comments that are listed here into the document by the time we send it to council to decide to distribute.
Mm-hmm.
At that point, I wouldn't be adding more comments until it comes to the planning commission for a public hearing, at which point, essentially, it would be between staff and the planning commission, we would decide which of these should be incorporated into a new document, change the document, and probably have potentially additional hearings, or certainly additional meetings before moving to adopt.
Can you clarify that? What's the vision or the thought on what that hearing might entail? Is that or maybe from Mark historically, how much actual input has there been on something like this?
I guess from my perspective, we would look for the community to come in and give their opinions, their feelings. I expect that members of the coordinating committee will be there. I can't speak for East Lansing's past processes, but certainly in other cities that I've worked with.
I'm just trying to get
A new comprehensive plan, and I would suggest that, as your planner, I would approach a new comprehensive plan differently than I did the update. I don't expect a lot of, public feedback, honestly. I think that we'll see comments coming in from the coordinating committee and their constituents. So I certainly expect a decent amount of changes to be made after it comes back from the review period.
Yeah.
But I don't expect we'd fill a room. I'd be very pleased if we did. I don't expect that, though. And Councilmember Meadows, I don't know if you have.
I would say that, there has been a different approach to this every decade. And at this point in time, I think that, my reading of the council would be, and myself, would be to have a more robust opportunity for the public to participate in reviewing this and making comments. So we'll probably try to design something that would encourage that, where maybe we didn't do that in the past. So I'm not sure exactly what we'll see, but if we were talking originally about a 6-week period, I think you had in the staff report, I think that's a good period. That's a length of time that gives people who want to take a look at this and make comments an opportunity to do it. And if we can schedule a couple of public opportunities within that period, I think that we will satisfy our obligation to make sure that everybody in the community who wants to talk about this has an opportunity to do so.
Okay.
I have
Commissioner
one-
Denault?
Yeah, I have one question for Landon, I'm so sorry. And this might just be like very minute, but I didn't get a chance to ask it at our previous meetings. On page 61, it says, offer pre-approved housing plans for missing middle house types. What is a pre-approved housing plan? Does that mean that it's like a sort of development that wouldn't go through planning commission or wouldn't go through the sort of normal regulatory
Yes.
flow? Okay.
Yeah, essentially that would be, we'll often see this in some communities for, say, accessory dwelling units, where you might say the community, and I'm not proposing this, I guess, as part of this plan.
Just as an example.
But as an example, this is from a previous city I worked at, where we said, okay, not all accessory dwelling units are going to be okay, but we have vetted a couple plans, and and they've already gone through the process, and people had no problem at all with these. Generally, sort of acceptable to the community, and the community and planning commission and council have determined this plan, if we see it or something like it all over the place, we're good with it.
Okay.
So essentially, you would apply for a building permit. The applicant would apply for a building permit with that plan,
Yeah.
and knowing that it's going to be approved. That it doesn't have to be limited to an ADU. It could be a single family. It could be a two-family on a certain size property. It could be anything. This suggestion was missing middle, which is sort of a housing typology that we don't see as much of. I know there was a question at the committee meeting last week, can we have some better graphics about that? So we're going to incorporate that too. So that might be a low-rise multifamily apartment building of 4 units, for example, in certain places. That would require an ordinance change, and I would see that as a potential implementation step down the road. I don't see that as a near term, but that would be how I would approach that with a pre-approved plan. Is that-
Wondering if some of the new definitions and some of the things in the ordinance changes would potentially pop up here as areas of intense interest or.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, I mean, as far as ordinance amendments going, like, we have a pending package of ordinance amendments right now that will be a public hearing by council in a couple of weeks. And those are all not policy changes, they're all intended to be corrections. So amendments to the zoning ordinance would follow from this comprehensive plan. That would be more of policy changes that would be referring or essentially aimed to implement this plan. But that would also have its own community engagement process that would go along with that, and the whole process for adoption and public hearings as
And
well.
by inviting input, that would take some of the heat out of it too, when you're looking for feedback and not shying from it.
Seeing no additional comments, I can make it's just a quick motion, so I can make a motion. I don't even know if we need to do a motion for this, but I'm gonna do it anyways. Yes, we can, generally. We don't, but we will now. I recommend referral of the comprehensive plan update document listed in our agenda packet to City Council. Moved by Chair Sullivan, seconded by Commissioner Denault. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. The comprehensive plan update document is now referred to council at a to-be-determined council meeting.
Thank you.
That takes us to, thank you. Come on, the 90-page document is all yours. Up next is commissioner concerns. Is there any concerns from commissioners? None. Seeing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Overbey, seconded by Mr. Putz. Seeing no discussion, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. We are adjourned at 8:27 PM.